Greetings, AP Scholars. Today we're going to continue our work with straightening out the line of reasoning. On Wednesday's remote day, you were practicing this skill by completing a graphic organizer for recognizing and tracking the line of reasoning in Aaron McKeon's TED Talk, Go Ahead and Make Up New Words. Today we're going to practice once again on something that is a little bit more difficult potentially and more in line with what you will see on the AP exam. So today we're going to use an AP style rhetorical analysis prompt to as a model for tracking the line of reasoning in another person's argument. So a quick reminder of our skill that we're focusing on, describe the line of reasoning and explain whether it supports an argument's overarching thesis. A reminder that our essential question is, how do writers and speakers establish a line of reasoning that supports an argument's overarching thesis? So I'm going to give you a few moments to gather the materials that you need for this lesson from Schoology. You will need the Malala speech notes. This will help you with your note-taking purposes today, but it is solely for the sake of taking notes. You will not be submitting that document. I'd also like you to open up the Malala speech document, which is the prompt itself and the passage itself. And I'd also like you to open up the Tracking and Evaluating Line of Reasoning graphic organizer, which is the same graphic organizer you used to track the line of reasoning in Aaron McKeon's TED Talk. So once you have all of these materials open and ready to go, you can come on back to this video and proceed. So now that you have your notes opened up, we're going to take a minute to warm up our brains a little bit, get us thinking about AP language and composition, and ease into the idea of rhetorical analysis and analyzing the line of reasoning and evaluating the line of reasoning. In your note sheet then, you should see a quick warm-up that says, consider the famous expression, the pen is mightier than the sword. Write its meaning out in your own words. So take 30 seconds to a minute to pause this video, and in your notes, write your own translation for what that expression means. Okay, when you're back, you have a further direction in your note-taking sheet to explore the terms listed. These terms are synecdoche and metonymy. That's how you say both of them, metonymy and synecdoche. And I'm going to ask you to explore two resources on these terms. One is an informative web page, and the other is a quick video that delineates between these two terms and their functions. And I'd like you just to pause the video where you need to jot down a few notes that might help you remember these terms and how they function, and also take a look at the informative web page I have listed there for you, once again to add to your notes as a way to remember how these two terms are used, what they mean, and where you might find them. When you're all set, you can come on back to this video to proceed. All right, so we had talked about previously when we looked at rhetorical analysis prompts for the AP exam, the importance of mining the prompt. So we're going to take a little bit of time right now to read the prompt itself, not the passage, just the prompt, and extrapolate from the prompt what we can glean about the rhetorical situation that surrounds this particular passage. So questions we want to ask ourselves are also listed in your note-taking sheet. And again, this is going to take us back to our SOAPstone acronym. So when we think about the rhetorical situation and the components of it, we want to ask ourselves questions like, who is the speaker? What do we know about her based only on the prompt? You may know Malala Yousafzai from other studies that you've done in past classes. You might know her from the news and the work that she's done. And so you might have some background information about Malala, but you're going to base your knowledge on what the prompt itself provides. Who is the intended audience? What is the intended occasion or context? What might we imply about the speaker's purpose? What is the message, the speaker's purported message? Can we tell anything about that? And what was the exigence for the speech? So the exigence is really just what is the thing that prompted the speaker to write the speech or the writer to write the passage. So let's take a moment to read the prompt together, and then I'll give you a few minutes to reflect on these questions and jot a few notes to yourself in your note-taking sheet. The prompt reads, on July 12, 2013, the first ever youth takeover of the UN took place in New York City, which brought together hundreds of young education advocates from around the world, including Malala Yousafzai, who made her first public speech since being attacked by the Taliban in Pakistan in 2012. Yousafzai, a Pakistani activist, UN Messenger of Peace, and the youngest Nobel laureate, delivered this address on education to the Youth Assembly on Malala Day, her 16th birthday. Read the passage carefully, then identify the elements of the rhetorical situation present as Yousafzai develops her message that education is power. So at this point, I'd like you to take a few minutes to pause this video, go back into your notes, and reference the prompt itself while you attempt to answer some of these questions about the rhetorical situation. Again, we're not reading into the prompt just yet, the passage itself. We're just focusing our energies on extrapolating from the prompt what we can about the rhetorical situation. Okay, folks, so hopefully you took a few minutes to mine the prompt, so to speak, and to extrapolate from the prompt what you can about the rhetorical situation. So see how your notes might compare to mine on this screen. When I looked at the prompt, some clues about the speaker that I noted are in this like purpley pink color. We know that it's Malala Yousafzai that is talking. From the prompt, we know that she had previously been attacked about a year earlier, or in the previous year, she had been attacked by the Taliban. And she is a Pakistani activist, a UN Messenger of Peace, and the youngest Nobel laureate. We also know that on the date that she delivered this speech, it was her 16th birthday, so we know that she's quite young. When we take a look at the occasion and the context, we can see that the speech was delivered on July 12th, 2013 in New York City at the first ever youth takeover of the UN. So we understand that this is also part of that context. And again, she delivered this address to the Youth Assembly, which also gives us an idea about who her audience was, right? So her audience, we know, was a group of, and I probably should have put this in blue as well, but we know that it's hundreds of young education advocates from around the world. So that's really her audience. That really should also be in blue, but I accidentally missed that. So you would definitely want to make a note of that in your notes. Thinking about the exigence, she prepared this speech specifically for this youth takeover of the UN. So she's keeping this event in mind as she is creating this speech. But it's likely that her traumatic experience in 2012 also did prompt her advocacy, and then also as a result of that, the speech that she's giving. What is the subject of the speech? We know that the subject is education. We also see that reiterated down here in her message, that education is power. I also want to make a note of this, that in other prompts you might not get this little indicator of what the message is. Instead, the prompt would just simply say, read the passage carefully, then identify the elements of the rhetorical situation present as Yousafzai develops her message. And that's where the prompt would end. So at this point, I would like to give you a few minutes to actually read the prompt itself. If you would like to read along with me, there is another video that I provided for today of just me reading the prompt, or the passage itself. So if you would like to hear it read, you can listen to that video while you're reading along. If you prefer just to kind of read it yourself, then I'm going to give you a few minutes right now to do so. Of course, you can annotate as you wish if you have the capacity or the capability to print it out, or you can find another way electronically to annotate as well if you wish. As you're reading, of course, the first thing that we're going to home in on in tracking the line of reasoning would be to discern Malala Yousafzai's thesis statement in this speech that she's delivering. So again, a thesis statement can be implicit or explicit. It can be explicitly stated, meaning that it's a direct statement of her thesis, or it can just be implied. So as you read along, the first thing that you're going to think about is, do I understand or know what her message is? What is her actual thesis statement? So before you return to this video, I would also take a minute in your graphic organizer to jot down what you believe her message to be or what you believe her thesis statement is. And that's the first thing that your line of reasoning graphic organizer is going to ask you about. When you're all set, you can come on back here to check your work against mine. So folks, hopefully you had a few minutes to read through the passage at this point and take some notes. Maybe you annotated the passage as you read, and also hopefully you jotted down what you believe to be her thesis statement. You can check out right now how your thesis statement compares to mine. I wrote that her thesis statement is that education is the most powerful weapon to combat the inequities and injustices of the world. So at this point, make any necessary adjustments that you'd like to make to your thesis statement, because remember, your line of reasoning that you're going to delineate throughout her speech has to work to support this particular thesis statement. So take a moment and pause this if you need to make any adjustments to your thesis statement. Of course, the next step in evaluating the line of reasoning or tracking the line of reasoning is to try to understand the claims that the speaker is making. So I'm going to give you once again a few moments to pause this video, and in your graphic organizer I'd like you to try to identify the 4 claims that Malala is making in this speech, and this time there really are 4 claims. So try to fill each one of those claims boxes with 4 claims that you see her making or developing throughout the passage. When you're ready, jump back here and check your work against mine. So hopefully you had a chance to jot down a few of the claims that you see Malala Yousafzai using in her or developing in her speech. I'd like you to compare how yours, or check how yours compared to mine, and make any adjustments that you might want to make before you proceed to think about evidence for these claims and how these claims support her thesis statement and connect to one another. So for claims, I came up with knowledge is intimidating and thus to be feared as my first claim. Some members of the Taliban are uneducated themselves, therefore they are easily manipulated to believe false information from terrorist leaders. And again, this claim is a little bit more implicit. In other words, there isn't a direct statement about this. Instead, there's more anecdotal evidence to support this claim and imply this claim or infer this claim. My third claim I found was that women and children are disproportionately denied opportunities for education. And finally, those who are educated must use their education to fight for education for all. So pause the video, again, compare your claims that you found throughout to the claims that I noted here. Make any adjustments that you want to. You may also want to go back and reread the passage with these claims in mind, trying to see where you think they fall within the passage, and make any adjustments to your graphic organizer that you'd like to with the claims. From here, I'm going to have you complete the work on your own, and what you're going to do is finish the graphic organizer. Once you finish the graphic organizer, I'm going to ask you to compare your work to the completed graphic organizer that I have posted. Again, it's not worth it for you to look at that graphic organizer before doing your own work, because that would defeat the purpose of the exercise. So try your own hand at completing the graphic organizer. Compare your graphic organizer to the completed one I've provided for you. And then in your note-taking sheet, I'm going to ask that you that you reflect on the differences or the comparisons, the likenesses or the differences between your work and my completed model that I've provided for you. When you submit your graphic organizer, in the note section of that submission slot, you're going to copy and paste that reflection. So that reflection that compares and contrasts your work to the completed graphic organizer will get pasted into the notes section of your submission.